When we talk about manifestation, the most common image is that of a linear process. You want something, you work to get it, and eventually you receive it. But in quantum reality, this logic is inverted. What makes manifestation happen is not the chase after the result, but a silent dance between intention, inner state, and surrender. It's counterintuitive because we've been taught to do to have, yet the field responds in a far subtler and more paradoxical way. The secret isn't just feeling as if you already had it, though that's an important part, but knowing how to let go in a very specific way, a way that isn't resignation, but a deep adjustment in your frequency. Bruce Lipton reminds us that our cells react first to the perception we carry, not to the force of our actions. In other words, your body begins aligning with what it believes is real before your rational mind has even processed it. Joe Dispenza goes further, showing that the heart and brain, when in coherence, project a powerful electromagnetic field capable of reorganizing realities. But this field doesn't open under tension or constant vigilance. It opens when control is gently released, when your biology interprets that it is safe to receive. Most people fail here. They try to manifest by asking, planning, and insisting so much that the body itself enters defense mode, emitting a scarcity signal. It's like trying to call a bird by shouting. It won't come closer because it senses the tension in the air. The quantum field likewise responds far more to the vibration of trust than to the desperation of effort. So before we move forward, here's a question that might completely change your perspective. What if the key to finally receiving what you desire isn't to intensify your search, but to stop waiting in a way so specific and coherent that the field has no choice but to deliver? The popular manifestation narrative is simple and seductive. You decide what you want, make a plan, act consistently, and over time, the universe delivers. It sounds logical, it sounds practical, and that's exactly why so many get frustrated. In the quantum field, reality doesn't follow that straight line. What happens is more like a cycle or a sudden collapse of possibilities, something that forms in the invisible and only later translates into the material world. In quantum physics, particles don't move in a linear fashion from point A to point B. They exist in states of potential until a factor, usually observation, collapses that possibility into something concrete. Applied to life, this means the result has already been decided in the field before any physical action takes place. This means the most powerful moment of manifestation happens before you lift a single finger to act. The big problem is that we insist on acting from the logic of cause and effect, ignoring that in the quantum field, the relationship is reversed. First the inner state, then the inspired action. When we skip this order, we put energy into a path that often isn't aligned with what we truly want. And that's why the road feels long and exhausting. It's like trying to watch a movie that's already been filmed while insisting on editing the scenes as the projector runs. The script was actually written earlier, in your frequency and in the emotions you hold as your baseline. If that script is misaligned, no amount of physical action will make it coherent. That's why understanding the myth of the straight line is liberating. It's not about running faster, but realizing the race has already begun. And your first role is to align your frequency so that when action comes, it is inevitably the translation of a field already prepared to deliver to you. When you see a result in your life, whether it's an achievement, a loss, a meeting, or a synchronicity, it was already manufactured beforehand in the invisible field. Quantum physics and neuroscience point out that there is always a delay between what happens energetically and the moment our senses capture and interpret it. It's like observing the light of a star. The light you see now may have been emitted years or even centuries ago. The human brain works in a similar way. Research shows that when you consciously perceive something, your nervous system has already processed and reacted to the information milliseconds earlier. In other words, when you think you're witnessing the present, you're actually dealing with the immediate past. This reveals that physical manifestation is only the last stage of a process that began long before, in invisible layers. This notion is transformative because it changes the strategy. If what we see is already the past, it makes no sense to react to reality as if it were the cause. It's the effect. We then begin to focus on preparing the internal field, the emotional state, the coherence between mind and heart, knowing that this pre-film decides how the final scene will unfold. The field's delay also explains why results aren't immediate when you change your frequency. There is a period of reorganization in which the field must realign the pieces of your life so that the external scenario reflects your new state. Resisting this delay is like planting a seed and digging up the soil every day to see if it has sprouted. You only slow down its blooming. When you understand that reality is a delayed snapshot of your past vibration, you stop reacting with anxiety and start acting with awareness. That's when the game changes. You stop fighting what you see and start investing energy in what you're creating, even if it's still invisible to your eyes. When we intensely desire something, it's common to believe that this willpower is accelerating its arrival. But at the quantum level, the energy behind the desire is far more important than the request itself. If the desire is infused with "I don't have it yet," the field receives exactly that code: absence. It's like trying to transmit a love message over the radio, but with the dial tuned to the wrong station. The signal you send doesn't match what you actually want to hear in return. Imagine the quantum field as an echo. Everything you emit, it returns at the same frequency. When you shout, "I want," the echo doesn't respond. Here it is, it responds, "I want," meaning it reflects the vibrational state of lack. That's why often, the more we ask, the more we reinforce the distance between ourselves and what we want. The emotion accompanying the request is the true code the field reads. This is why so many people say, "I try to manifest, but nothing happens." It's not that nothing happens, it's that the manifestation is loyal to what's being transmitted. If the dominant energy is scarcity, fear, or urgency, the field simply maintains more experiences that match that signature. The secret isn't to desire less, but to change the emotional base from which the desire originates. When the request comes from an inner state of wholeness rather than lack, it stops being a request and becomes a natural extension of who you already are. And that's when the field's response stops being an echo and starts being creation. Thus, manifesting isn't about insisting until you convince the universe, but about becoming, vibrationally, the place where it already exists. Because in the end, we don't attract what we ask for, we attract what we are already being. There is a subtle moment in the manifestation process when everything changes, and it doesn't happen when you finally receive what you asked for, but rather when the body stops looking for signs that it's coming. This instant is the point of emotional inversion, the shift from the state of watchful waiting to the state of creative presence. It's as if suddenly, the need to check for results loses its meaning, and you begin to live as if the outcome were already settled. When the body reaches this point, it switches off defense mode, that constant state of vigilance in which cortisol levels are high and the mind is always on alert. Neurophysiologically, this means your nervous system stops interpreting the desire as a threat or as something missing and begins to treat it as part of your natural environment. Your internal chemistry changes, and this change is sensed by the quantum field as a new, coherent signal. This is why things we've been waiting for often arrive the moment we stop thinking about them. It's not magic, it's physiology and physics working together. By releasing tension, you stop sending the code of absence and begin emitting the code of integration. What once was someday becomes now, even if it hasn't yet materialized physically. At the inversion point, the field responds more quickly because there's no more resistance. Your energy is no longer spent on monitoring and confirming absence, but on expanding presence. It's a state of quiet trust, where there is no effort, only alignment. It's in this space that manifestation stops being a struggle and becomes an inevitable reflection. Put simply, you manifest when you stop trying to manifest. Because in that moment, the vibration the field reads is not "I want" or "I need." It's "I am" and "I have." And for the quantum field, that difference changes absolutely everything. Between the moment you set an intention and the instant it manifests, there is a space. For most people, this gap is seen as an uncomfortable void, a waiting period that must be filled with effort, control, and vigilance. But in the quantum field, this space is not absence, it's fertile ground, where the new reality begins to take shape beyond your immediate sight. Ancient cultures understood this interval as a portal. It wasn't something to be endured with anxiety, but to be lived with reverence. It was the time of energetic gestation, where the invisible reorganizes to sustain what will emerge in the visible. Just as a seed is not disturbed every day to check if it's sprouting, your intention needs silence and stability to bloom. Quantum physics reminds us that observation changes the outcome, but observation loaded with expectation or doubt can distort the collapse of possibilities. That's why the field responds best to full presence, being aware, but not pressuring the timing or form of the result. In this state, you keep your energy aligned and allow synchronicity to work in your favor. This space is also a mirror. It reflects who you truly are when there's no external proof. If, in this period, you sustain coherence and trust, you reinforce the signal you've sent. But if you oscillate between faith and frustration, the field receives mixed messages and responds with fragmented results. The power lies in remaining whole, even in the silence of the process. In the end, the gap between intention and result is the place where the quantum leap happens. It's there that you stop being someone who desires and become someone already living in the vibration of what you asked for. This space is not to be filled, it's to be inhabited. The more comfortable you become in it, the more naturally the result presents itself. There's a very fine line between dedication and vibrational exhaustion, and more often than not, we cross it without realizing. Forced effort is born from the silent belief that if I don't do everything, nothing will happen. This internal state, though it might look like motivation, actually carries the vibration of fear and urgency, two frequencies that distort the signal sent to the quantum field. When you force focus and visualization, your body doesn't feel expansion, it feels contraction. The emotions that should nourish your intention are slowly replaced by tension, anxiety, and self-pressure. It's like trying to keep a flower open by force. The gesture destroys the very blooming you desire. Heart coherence, which Joe Dispenza emphasizes so much, is lost in this process because the heart perceives the body's true state, not the mind's words. The paradox is that in the quantum field, intensity does not mean pressure. A powerful intention is born from clarity and trust, not insistence and exhaustion. When the mind enters constant watch mode, the body's chemistry shifts. Cortisol rises, brain waves speed up, and the nervous system moves into defense. This reduces your ability to perceive synchronicities and to sustain elevated emotional states. The secret isn't working more on the intention, it's working less against it. That means creating space for the process to flow, alternating conscious action with intentional pause. It's in this rhythm that energy reorganizes and finds new pathways to manifest what you desire. When you notice yourself trying to control every detail, do a small release ritual. Breathe deeply, feel your body relax, and mentally say, "The field is already working on this." This simple act shifts your internal state, restores body coherence, and lets manifestation progress without the interference of over-effort. The observer effect in quantum physics reveals something profound. The mere act of looking at a possibility changes its outcome. But here's the detail rarely discussed. Not any look transforms. What shifts reality is observation free of need, the kind that contemplates without trying to force the result. When you observe with attachment, anxiously waiting for something to happen, your attention isn't just registering, it's transmitting tension. The quantum field reads that energy as instability and often keeps the manifestation suspended until the signal stabilizes. It's like planting a seed and digging it up every day to see if it's sprouted. That constant checking interrupts the natural process. Detached observation is both active and relaxed. It's being present, aware of what's happening, but without demanding that the scene instantly match your desire. This kind of attention creates space for the field to rearrange probabilities without mental control interfering. Joe Dispenza talks about this when describing deep meditative states where you can feel the future as already existing, without pressure for it to appear now. A simple example is that of an artist. When they create to impress or prove something, the result carries tension. But when they create for the pure joy of creation, without trying to control the audience's reaction, the work takes on a life of its own and reaches more people. Manifestation works the same way. When you engage for the sheer pleasure of being in the desired state without needing to force the ending, reality adjusts far more fluidly. Practicing this observation is like being a traveler watching the landscape through a train window. No rush, no demand, just the certainty that the journey is unfolding. It's in this relaxed vigilance that the collapse of probabilities happens in the most harmonious way. Neutrality is not indifference, and it's certainly not apathy. It's a state of stable trust, where the body and mind are no longer swinging between expectation and frustration. In the quantum field, this neutrality acts as a code that allows new realities to reveal themselves. When you are neutral, there's no vibrational noise, no mixed signals. It's as if you were telling the universe, "I'm ready to receive whatever is most aligned with me," without forcing the timing or the form. Physically, this state is recognized by a body and chemical balance. Cortisol, the stress hormone, is low, brain waves tend toward alpha patterns, and breathing becomes deep and rhythmic. Bruce Lipton explains that this internal biochemistry is not just an emotional reflection, but a direct signal to the cells, telling them it's safe to exit defense mode and enter growth mode. And that mode is exactly where manifestation finds fertile ground to occur. The danger lies in confusing neutrality with feeling nothing. In truth, it's about feeling deeply, but without getting lost in what you feel. It's like standing before the ocean. You can feel the power of the waves, but you don't need to fight against them. You simply remain present, allowing the movement to exist while staying firmly anchored within yourself. This energetic posture prevents you from being swept away into frequencies that do not match your new state. In the vibrational field, neutrality is perceived as consistency, and consistency is synonymous with reliability to the quantum field. A stable signal is much easier to amplify and return as reality. Joe Dispenza says that when the mind and heart align at this point of emotional stability, the field responds with speed and precision. Ultimately, the code of neutrality is the opposite of vibrational lack. It's being so anchored in your own frequency that you no longer seek externally for what already vibrates internally. It's an "I'm okay" that is not avoidance, but true presence. And that, paradoxically, opens the doors for the best of the future to approach effortlessly. One of the biggest misconceptions about manifestation is believing we are bringing something new into our lives. From a quantum perspective, nothing you desire is truly out of reach or in a distant future. Everything already exists in potential. Multiple realities coexist within the field. Manifestation is not creating from scratch, but revealing what was already aligned to your frequency, simply waiting for the moment you became compatible to experience it. Think of analog photography. The image is already imprinted on the film, invisible to the eyes. The development process doesn't invent the photo. It merely makes visible what was already there. The quantum field works in a similar way. When you change your internal state, you begin to develop realities that were previously outside your perception. And as Bruce Lipton explains, this change is not just mental, but cellular. When perception changes, biology changes, and the world around you follows. Joe Dispenza reinforces that the field responds to emotional coherence, not pure desire. In other words, no matter how badly you want something, if your vibrational signature is not in harmony with it, reality cannot reflect it. This is the part that frustrates many manifestors. They think they need to ask more, when in truth what's missing is vibrating differently. When we understand that manifestation is a return, a reflection of the signal we emit, we stop acting like hunters chasing something scarce. We begin to position ourselves as stable transmitters, sending out the frequency that already contains what we seek. At that point, reality starts delivering, not as a favor, but as a natural consequence. This shift in perspective is liberating because it removes manifestation from the realm of anxiety and places it in the realm of conscious choice. You don't run after what you want. You tune in to what is already yours in potential. And as a result, what once seemed impossible becomes simply inevitable. The quantum trigger is not a grand gesture, a drastic change, or a flawless plan. It is in fact a symbolic, simple, and coherent act. one capable of shifting the frequency you transmit and consequently the way the quantum field responds. Often, it's these small, seemingly insignificant actions that signal to the universe that you have truly shifted your internal state. This happens because the field doesn't measure the size of the action. It reads the quality of the vibration behind it. A single no to an old habit or a yes to an aligned choice can have more impact than weeks of forced effort. As Joe Dispenza describes, the body's electromagnetic field instantly registers the new state, and that coherence is perceived by the whole. These micro-gestures act as vibrational anchors. They inform your subconscious and your body itself that you are already living in alignment with the desired reality. Replacing an object that represents a closed chapter, changing the way you enter a room, or even shifting your posture in a conversation are triggers that, when repeated, reconfigure your emission pattern. Bruce Lipton would explain this as the reprogramming of cells through perception. The quantum trigger, however small, communicates to your nervous system that the change is real and present. And when the body believes, the field responds. The secret is understanding that the trigger itself isn't magical. It's the physical signal of an internal decision. When intention, emotion, and action are aligned, even the simplest gesture can become the switch that turns on a new timeline. From there, synchronicities begin to unfold almost effortlessly. Manifesting in reverse is at its core an act of conscious surrender. It's not about giving up on what you want, but about stopping the transmission of the vibration of absence to the field. When you release with clarity, the body leaves defense mode, the heart slows down, and your biology begins operating under the chemistry of safety. At this point, as Bruce Lipton explains, your cells start responding to a new state of perception, silently shaping your reality. Joe Dispenza reinforces that this coherence between mind and heart creates such a stable electromagnetic field that opportunities stop feeling like luck and start becoming a natural consequence. The leap doesn't happen when you prove to the universe that you deserve it, but when you simply live as if you already are. The most challenging part is realizing that often what's missing is not more focus, more discipline, or more effort, but less control. And that the space between intention and result is not a gap to be filled with anxiety, but fertile ground where reality organizes itself in your favor. The paradox is simple. Everything you want already exists in the field. What blocks it is the constant state of waiting. When you decide to stop waiting, the timeline adjusts so that what was already yours can finally arrive. So try replacing vigilance with presence and seeking with allowing. Perhaps what you've been chasing for years is at this very moment just one step away from you stopping the chase.